Hello, everybody. It's late in the day after 2 days of having your heads filled up with information, so a special thank you for you to being in the room at this point. The topic of this conversation is the scope of incident reviews. My name's Rachel Silber, and I've spent about 10 years giving incident reviews, facilitating them, coaching other people to facilitate them. There's a few lessons that I learned from doing that, and I'm happy to share them with you. The subtitle of this talk, or the top title of this talk, I guess, is Learning Inside the Box. And the reason I picked that title is because when we come to incident reviews, we all have a lot of constraints on us. We really have this really limited amount of time for preparation, limited resources for preparation. We have to engage with people. And then we're going to learn about something very complex with possibly a lot of emotional freight to it. And we're going to do that in 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours. It's a big ask. So we're going to collectively make sense of the incidents that happen. And my perspective is that the important part of an incident review is that collective sense-making. So what I'm going to present here is a few tools and tips for making that better for the people who come to your incident reviews. So what is included in the scope of an incident review? It's the time dimension of the incident, when it happened, the systems involved, and who's on the invitation list, who you get to have in the room. And I'm going to motivate this with an abstraction of a real incident that I reviewed, but a common pattern that happens on the internet. Internet traffic is pretty spiky. It varies a lot over time. There's lots of reasons for that, but in the case that I'm talking about, there was a flash sale due to a product introduction. In infrastructure capacity, we'd love it to be steady and even all the time, but we all know things happen there. In this case, it was a planned maintenance that temporarily degraded system resilience. The conflict between these two gave a lot of people a bad day and a big incident review. And while I filed off the serial numbers of exactly what happened, the general pattern is not surprising to anybody who's worked on web-based systems. So the first aspect of the scope of the incident review is building a timeline. Pretty simple. That's, incident review 101, what happened and when did it happen? A couple points about that. Number one, there's more and more systems for collecting that time-stamped information, the alerts and the logs and the emails and connectors to everything in your environment with a timestamp on it. But there's non-time-stamped data that's also very valuable. When did decisions happen? When did those hallway conversations happen? Between 2 and 3 in the afternoon is a valid thing to put on your timeline. The direct impact of the scope of the timeline is where are you going to start talking about the incident. In the case of the incident that I'm talking about, I'm not going to talk with the incident declaration. Obviously, that's after the important stuff. I'm not going to start with the maintenance event itself and the router config changes. I'm going to start with the planning process for the maintenance event. There was a scheduling process about that. How did it not take into account information that people on the other side of the organization knew and the ops team didn't know? As you can see in the slide that I'm showing here, this is a very simplified view of what the ops team was able to see. And this is the view of how the events looked from the customer care team. The main point I want to make on this slide is that timeline information, even though we are looking at it in 2020 hindsight and we see this beautiful linear story, at the time that the events were happening, the full story wasn't available to most of or any one particular participant. And that's going to shape the narrative that we're going to tell about the incident review. the linear timeline can reveal and also obscure experiences that were had at the time. I'm not going to say much more about timelines, but I'm going to move on and talk about system diagrams. It's really important, in my experience, to come into an incident review with some kind of visualization of the system. That gives us like a common ground for the conversation that we're having. And there are a number of ways of having that visualization. There's architectural diagrams, data flow diagrams. Org charts are sometimes remarkably revealing about what's happening in an incident. But I'm going to talk to you for a couple of minutes about hierarchical control flow diagrams. These are a tool that come out of Nancy Levison's work on STPA, and they've been very valuable to me in my incident review practice. There's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, they inherently surface the safety constraints of the systems that you're talking about. That's exactly what they're purpose-built to do. And the second thing is that they provide a picture of a socio-technical system that connect the human beings with the technical systems in one diagram. And that's pretty rare in the kinds of diagrams that engineers often work with. So I'm going to show you an example of this. In practice, this diagram would have been even busier and had more boxes on it, but I figured this was enough for viewing from a distance. The flavor that I want to put here is a couple of things. Number one, there are these vertical arrows up and down. Each of those pairs of boxes connected with vertical arrows represents a controller with a controlling process. Stacking those together is what makes this a hierarchical control flow diagram. And you can see the layers from the bottom layer where I have the physical elements of the system all the way up to things like executive response and their communication with the customer executives. That was part of the incident response here. My practice has been to annotate these diagrams in red with the things that come up in interviews and in discovery before the incident review to provide a start on talking points. I'm not going to be able to tell you everything about hierarchical control flow diagrams. Learning to work with them well was a process. Fortunately, tomorrow there's a 90-minute talk on STPA from Teo Klein and friends, and lots more information there. I really hope you'll attend it because I think this is super valuable information for anybody working with incidents. But there's one more thing that I wanted to bring in here. That's that center arrow, which is not that hierarchical arrow. It's a horizontal arrow, and it's representing a coordination link that was missing in the incident. Very often when we have coordination issues or communication issues in an organization, it's easy to say, well, it's just human nature, or we'll try harder as a way to overcome it. I have never found those to be successful approaches. This model of coordination allows me to talk about the systemic aspects of coordination, the elements that have to be present in the system for coordination to happen successfully. And breaking it down like that, this says goals, strategies, decisions, communications, common observations, group decision-making, mental models, authority and accountability, and last but not least, predictability. All of these things are important for organizations to kind of troubleshoot coordination at a level more deeper than, well, people really ought to want to talk to each other. So I'm skimming over the surface of a lot of material here, but I'm going to turn to the question of inviting people to the review. One of the features of this incident was that it drew groups together from widely across the incident, widely across the organization, I'm sorry. The ops team and the network maintenance team work in their little bubble compared to the sales and customer support people who often aren't even aware of what's involved in each other's jobs. And for me, in the team that was responsible for incident reviews and that culture, there's a challenge there. So I'm building up, we're working as a team together and building up a culture of systems thinking about incidents and of blame-free reviews. And as I said at the beginning, my perspective in this talk is that the goal of the incident review is to deepen understanding about the systems involved. But that's not the only goal that can come into the room. There could be accountability. Two goals that I'm going to talk about particularly are accountability goals and prevention goals. And I'm going to talk about each of those briefly in the context of making this a better learning opportunity. First of all, accountability goals. In our example incident, the interaction with the customer is organizationally distant from the maintenance scheduling decision. And when I reach out to these organizationally distant groups, invite them to an incident review, especially those groups that don't have incidents as part of their daily workflow, two things might happen. The first thing is they read into that incident review, you're calling me up so you can point the finger at me and call me into the room and blame and shame me. That creates defensiveness, and that creates a situation where they're not going to tell you what you really wanted to learn about their systems and how it worked. The other thing they could do is they could go, this is my opportunity, YGS, it's my turn to point the finger and blame people. And they have a whole bunch of pain about the incident that might need to get released and talked about. Either way, an important thing to do, I've found, is to reach out to these people, especially the ones who are not part of your daily, weekly incident routine, and kind of pre-warm them. Give them an insight into why they're coming, what you hope to accomplish with the review, and give them some one-on-one time to release some of those feelings that they're bringing to the room, rather than in the incident review itself. Even after you've done that, I've found it to be a good practice to start the meeting with a little bit of a reminder for the whole room. Here's why we're here. Here are our goals today. This got called the safety liturgy at my company after a while, but the point is that it was a little bit of a grounding that happened in the room, and it was insufficient but helpful in creating a little bit of a safer space for the conversations. Moving on to prevention goals. It's totally reasonable for people to come to incidents and want to prevent future incidents. In fact, when I was working on these slides with a designer, she kept inserting the words "and prevent incidents" into all kinds of places where I wasn't expecting them, because to her, it was just obvious that that was what you do in incident reviews, right? I have found that combining the search for solutions with the understanding of the systems themselves has a bunch of pitfalls to it. It's not a terrible thing to do, but it does have some dangerous bits. First of all, if you ask people for action items, they are less likely to talk about the parts of the system where they don't know and don't understand things yet. What they're going to bring you are the low-hanging fruit. We can fix this alert, we can do more check-ins, we can do more code reviews, and they're going to shy away from systemic changes, especially deep and unfunded and unscheduled systemic changes. They're not going to get discussed if people think they're going to get held to the fire about doing those things on top of their regular work. The second thing that I've seen happen is that action items that get mandated in an incident review come out of an incident review and say all of these things are going into your ticketing system and getting assigned to your team. All of a sudden, the team feels like their planning process as a team has been run right over. Their team autonomy has been broken, and that creates long-term friction with the incident review process. So, on the other hand, many people are in the situation where and I have been too, where your incident reviews are measured by the action items that come out. You know, oh, look, this incident review got 5 action items. It was a good one, and that one only got 3? Not so good. Problems with metrics are a different talk. My preferred solution to this is to keep the action items in a different meeting than the meeting in which we are creating the incident narrative and a common sense making about the incident. At least not to let the incident review become a vehicle for somebody wandering by to attach their favorite solution to our problem today. In conclusion, in a 15-minute talk, I can't cram in everything that I have experienced in the last 10 years about incident reviews. It's not easy, and the journey is really rewarding and worthwhile, I've found. Sharing some mental models through timelines, through system diagrams, and through the values that we explicitly present leads to better understanding and hopefully better outcomes in the future.